don't need that. All right. So I'm just gonna go over really basic stuff. I've got I'll just go over really basic stuff for C#, and then I'll just go over really basic stuff for Torch. So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna use Visual Studio 2019, and we're just gonna start off by making a quick test console application project. So it should open up on this. You can go to create new project. Then you go to console app. You can just search for it. Mine's right here. I'll search for it because there's a couple that actually comes up. You should get the .NET Core, not the .NET Framework, because it's a little bit easier to do. So do that. I'll just call it my console app. I'm going to go ahead and put it somewhere. You can hit the three dots here and go somewhere. In this case, I'm just going to go into a special folder I called Sandbox, so I don't mess anything up. And I'll just select this folder and select that folder. Oh, I think I already have one, so I'll just call this app2, just so I don't have any conflicts. So hit create, give it a couple seconds, it'll create it for you. And there we go. So as you can see, I already put some nice stuff in here that are Hello World ready for us. Let's go ahead and build and run this really quick to see if it works. So how do we build the program? We can go up here, hit build solution. And then, oh look, build one succeeded. Let's go ahead and try running it really quick. This here will just automatically build and run. So we could have just hit this in the first place, but I just wanted to show you could get some stuff here. Oh, it said hello world. And looks like that's all good to go. So what is this? Well, if we look here, so we have a namespace here. We'll get that to it later. We have a class here. We'll also get that to it later. We have a function here called main. So this is a function. Essentially, this is the entry point to any program. Anything inside of this function will run first when the app is executed. That's just the way the console app works. So if we look right here, so essentially all this is going to do is you can put anything in here. I can say console.write line and say hi s equals in, and that'll print whatever that is to screen. So this is a function. Essentially all a function is it's how do I explain this? It's just like, think about a map. You have f of x. Well, that's not going to type it out very well because it's auto-corrected, but it's going to be f of some value x. So in this case in programming, f is the name of the function, the same way that console.writeLine is the name of this function, and x is what we're putting into the function. In this case, our argument for the function is hello world. So yeah, that's a function. So in C#, you create variables to store information. I'm sure most of you are really very familiar with that. In C#, by default, it gives us a ton of useful data types. Some of the ones you might use are integers. So that gives you an integer, can be positive or negative. I can say int. So that's a data type. I can say int I equals 4. Essentially all this does is it creates an integer called I with a value initially of 4. I could also just say int my int and not give it a value initially, but just keep in mind that it's declared but never used. Oh, bad error message. It's not going to have a value initially. So if I try to access it, it's going to say, oh, there's nothing in here. Where's the value? So I could also, if I want to set the value of my int later, I could say my int equals 16, and that'll just give it, that'll take the value of my int, sorry, I'm being an idiot, take the value of 16 and put it into the variable my int. So my int is now equivalent to 16. So if I were to try to output the value of my int now, I could say console.write line my int. And that should print out the value of my int. So let's see what this does if I execute it. So you said hello world, that's this line. Then we go to this line here and whatever that is. And then we declare a variable myint. We set the value of myint to 16 and we print out its value. So cute, everything works. Let's go take a look at some of our data types, shall we? So I'll just leave this here so we can keep on adding stuff. So another good data type to know is the Boolean value. So if any of you, all of you probably should know a Boolean value, but essentially all it is it's a value that can be either true or false. So in this case, let me just call it bool b equals true. Alternatively, I could also say bool b equals false. And I can console.write line b. If you guys noticed, it gave me an option for console.write. Essentially, all that's going to do is it's going to write a value, but it's not going to create a new line on it. Not very important for what we're looking at right now. So another good variable to know is strings and doubles. So string is just a string. So hello world here is a string, it's in quotes. I could say string s equals hello world here, and I can print that out. Another good data type is double. D equals 100.0. So essentially a double is it's a real number. It can have decimal points. It's technically a, goodness, what do you call it again? It's a double, yeah, it's a double precision floating point number. Essentially all floating point means is this point here floats around and it can go anywhere. So it lets you have the decimal point in the first place. And I can also write that to the console too. And let's just go ahead and run all this really quick, see what happens. It's okay, killer. Well, this is all being recorded, so I'll post it later so you can catch up if you missed the beginning. Is it? What happened? Did you even execute? I don't think it executed. There we go. All right, so let's see what happened. So hello world, blah, 16, false, hello world again, and whatever that decimal value is. So yeah, those are data types in C#. So let me just go ahead and kill all this really quick. And let's go ahead and look at flow control. So essentially all flow control is, so right now we've just been looking at step, the program does step 1, it does step 2, it does step 3, it does step 4, etc., and then it finishes. So flow control allows us to pick, depending on a condition, whether to execute some steps. So let's just go ahead and try doing, let's just declare an integer I equals 14. Now, one common way of flow control is to use the if-else statement. So in this case, I could say if some condition, in this case, I is equivalent to 2, then we can just say console dot write line I is 2. And that's a pretty basic thing. Now, we can extend the if statement by adding an else after it. So in this case, the else will execute if this condition is not true. So in this case, we can say console.write line I is not 2. So yeah, so what do you guys think will happen here? It's going to execute this or it's going to execute this? Everyone in favor of this line, raise your... Okay, never mind. I'm just going to execute it, see what happens. Oh my gosh, I is not 2. I wonder why that is. Yeah, so that's a conditional statement. So couple things to know how conditionals work. So the double equal sign is an operator. Now, an operator, if we look at math, we can say 1 plus 2 divided by 3. So in programming, we call these symbols operators. In this case, the plus sign is an operator that adds this number and this number together. The / is the operator that divides this number by this number. Now also keep in mind that in programming, there's an order of operations. So in this case, it's going to execute this first because division before addition, right? And then, so it's going to have 2/3 plus 1 in this case. So, yeah, that's basic math. Now, those are just basic normal algebraic operators. There's also a thing in C# called conditional operators. Essentially, conditional operators, they look at their operands, in this case 2 and I, and they compare them and they return either a true or a false value. So in this case, the double equal operator is an equivalence operator. I could say 4 equals 16, and this would return false, right? Another operator is the less than operator. So I could say 4 is less than 16, and this would be true. I could also use the less than or equal operator just by doing this, and I'll say 4 is less than or equivalent to 16, and that would also return true. You could also do greater than and or equivalent to and greater than equivalence operators. Let's see, what else? Oh, right, and then there's also the not equal operator. So that's in opposition to equals. So this will return true because 4 is not equivalent to 16. And then finally, we could also just use the exclamation mark as a not symbol by just doing this. So this will take the value of whatever this does and then not it. In this case, that'll just say, oh, 4 is not equivalent to 16, so that's false. But then we have this in front of here, and that'll make it true. So it makes it the opposite of whatever Boolean value it is. If it's false, it'll become true. If it's true, it'll become false. Pretty basic stuff. Also, nice thing, Boolean conditional operators can be used like a little bit like they can be used like normal values. So I could say console dot write line I equals 4, for example, and then that should print out an actual value. What? Did it? Oh, it's a ball there. What did I do wrong? Oh, I forgot a dot there. No wonder. Okay, let's try it again. Is it doing anything? Did I add an error? I don't know what happened. I'm going to stop it. You'll notice here there's a little stop button. I pressed to stop it. Well, let's see what went wrong. So, it's probably because I tried to put an expression in here. So let me just try making a bool value. B equals I equals 4, and then B goes here. Now I set the value of the conditional statement I equals 4 into B, and then wrote the value B out. Let's see if that changes anything. I honestly don't know what I did wrong there. Does anyone have any idea?
Doesn't anything in a right line have to be in quotation marks?
Well, that's a good point. Let me try that. So I should say like this plus B maybe. See if that works. No. But B is a variable. I just set it as a Boolean variable. Again, maybe I should do this. Maybe B equals I equals 4. Yeah, I is greater than 4 to make it easier to see. What? I'm trying to output the value of a conditional statement. Bracket it? Let's see if that works. Then I'll try putting down parentheses later. There we go, got it. Okay. Sorry, my bad. That was the issue. It was having a hard time converting the value B to a string. So you had to put the toString method after it. Sorry about that. I don't code in C# all the time, so that's just something I'm not the best at. But yeah, as you can see, we have a variable b here, and b is equivalent to the value of the conditional statement, I is greater than 4, and then we just converted b to a string here using, now in C#, practically every data type will have the method dot toString, and that just lets you convert it to strings. Sometimes it does it automatically, like when we did the hello world program earlier, but I guess in this case you'd needed to explicitly use that function. Okay, so let's move on a little bit. Oh, I should also probably show you a cute little thing that I really... No. Let's just go on to loops, okay? Is everyone here good right now? Do I need to go over anything? All right, loops. So let's go take a look at what a loop is. So, what is a loop? So if, let's just say we have step 1. Are you bloody kidding me? Step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay, so typically in program we have step 1, step 2, step 3. We might have a conditional statement that tells us whether or not to execute step 2. Now, in C#, loops let us go from step 3 back to step 1. So yeah, that's what a loop is. So in this case, let's just go and make a quick little Boolean variable. Let's call it bool, my bool equals true, for example. Now I'm going to use a while loop. Now what a while loop does is it loops while the conditional statement here is true. So I could say while my bool equals true, but you'll notice here that this is going to return a Boolean value anyways. So why don't I just take out the equals true and just say it like this? So it'll return, what this will do is it'll look at the value of my bool, and if my bool is true, then it'll loop. So that's the quick way of simplifying it. So, okay, so we have a loop, and if we put anything in here, it's going to execute over and over and over again. Now, how many times it's going to execute for? It's going to keep on executing till the end of time, because my bool is always going to be equivalent to true, because the value of my bool never changes, right? So, if I want to have it execute, I could maybe create an integer value here. Let's say int I equals 0, and I could say I equals I plus 1, and what that'll do is it's going to set the value of I to the value of whatever I is plus 1. So if I is 0 initially, if we run this once, it'll turn I into 1. If we run it again, it'll turn I into 2, I into 3, I into 4, and so on and so on. So now I could put a conditional statement here to say if I equals 10, then set my bool to false. And what will that do? Well, when the value of I reaches 10, it'll exit the loop because my bool is no longer true. So yeah, if I run this, it should not do anything because I'm not printing anything at the moment. But if I console.writeLine I out, it should give us a ton of things. Look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Fun. So why did that happen? Well, I was 0. It increased the value by 1. It wrote that out. And then it looped over and over and over again until it reached 10. And then it stopped the loop. Pretty simple stuff. If I wanted to, I could even simplify this further by saying while I is not equal to 10, and then that should write, no, my bad, while I is less than or equal to 10. And what that'll do is that'll do this, and when I is less than or equal to 10, it'll run. But then when I gets to 11, it won't run anymore. So, oh wait, but then that'll output 11 though, because then it'll say, oh, I equals 11, print out 11, so it has to be less than 10. So let's see what that happens. What that happens when I do that. Do that really quick. I think I did something wrong. Did I do something wrong? No, I didn't do anything wrong. Okay, great. So still having the same result. I feel like I could probably be saying this a little bit easier to go into for loops, as you guys probably know exactly what I'm going to do right now. But yeah. So one simplified way, since we end up doing this a ton in programming, to say this is to say for, and then essentially a for loop. So this is a for loop. Essentially you have 3 different things can go in here. You're going to have statement 1, statement 2, and statement 3. And then it loops whatever's inside of here. So essentially statement 1 runs once when we're entering the for loop. Statement 2 is a conditional that is checked before running the for loop, and if it's true, it runs the for loop. If it's false, it doesn't run the for loop at all. And statement 3 is ran at the, is it the beginning or end? I think it's at the end of each for loop, right? End. Okay. Right. All right. So if I want to replicate this, essentially I would say I could say int I equals 0 here, and I'll create an integer I at the beginning of the for loop. I could say while I is less than 10, and then I could say I equals I plus 1. Now in let me just go ahead and show you what this does really quick, and let me delete everything else so it doesn't clutter up the workspace. Everything's good? Okay. Oh my gosh, what did I do wrong here? I'm such a bad person because I forgot to tell you to do. So why to do that? Do you guys just want me to skip this? Is anyone really learning anything at the moment? I can just skip this. I feel like it's being really redundant. Alright, let's see who's on.
I think it's a lot of people some people have never done coding before, so it's like, what is all this? So a lot of it is like, you need to explain the functions, or like, oh, what does for mean? What is an int? I still don't understand what static void means. Some people might do that.
Yeah, you're probably right. Alright then. Okay, let me go ahead and do a quick step back. Let's see, Killer, do you want to say something? So, what do you have any questions right now specifically? Oh, true. All right. How about this? I'll just go ahead and I assume everyone else here has a base in C programming and kind of understands what I'm doing already. Okay, I'm just gonna go. All right. So how about this? I'll go through classes really quick and functions really quick, and then I'll just get into torch stuff. Okay? Sound good? All right. Okay. Finishing up here, we set the value of int at I equals 1. We loop it while I is less than 10 and I increments up. Okay, so functions really quick. So function, we have a data type here. Let me just create this as a bool data type, and then I'll say my function. So this is the data type return, data type the function returns. This is the name of the function, and then we're going to give it some arguments. So let's say int I, and then let's make that function. So this is the basic syntax for a function. Oh, okay. Well, let's just ignore that for now. So let's just go ahead and do some quick thing with the int I. So I'm going to create a boolean value, bool b, and then let me just go ahead and make bool b equal to, let's say I equals, I is greater than 1, or greater than 0 to make it actually worth something. So boolean b will be true if I is greater than 0, false if I is less than or equivalent to 0. So way the functions work in C# is you need to return a value at the end if you specify it. In this case, we ask for a boolean value to be returned, therefore a boolean value must be returned. If we want to, we can return any boolean value. I could just say return true. This is the way the program knows what to return. In this case, returning the value true as the return value of the function. I'll go over what the return value does in just a moment. So in this case, we have a Boolean value of Boolean b. I'm going to return that. And since it's a Boolean value, it'll let us return that. Now, in C#, we use functions to do functions in our code. So in this case, what all this function is doing is it's looking at an input integer I. It's going to ask itself if the value of I is greater than 0, and it'll return true if it is greater than 0 and false if it is not greater than 0. If we want to, we could go into, if we want to use my function, we could say if my function is, if my function with, now we need to give it an argument since we asked for an argument here. So I'm going to say 10, and this should return true because I is greater than 10. Okay, so as you can see here, I called. Did I do something wrong? What did I do wrong? I have really no idea what I did wrong here. This should. Is this called something incorrectly? Public bool my function say if this dot my function program dot my function. What the heck? Okay, you guys just gonna watch me go ahead and tear myself because I don't know anything about C# apparently. Jeez. This should work. I don't see any reason why it should not work.
You've reached the boundaries of my knowledge. I can't help you here.
Yeah, like, this should work. Let me see, int I equals 10. Let's put this implicitly as an integer in here in case that was somehow a double or something. Okay, that's still not working. Maybe this needs to be declared before this is declared for whatever reason. Oh. F you. Okay, I really. Oh my gosh. You are being absolutely terrible right now. Okay, so, how do I explain this? For whatever reason, in C# it doesn't let you use a static function outside of inside of a static function. In this case, void main is static, so it doesn't let you use it because apparently it's not instantiated or whatever it is. I don't even understand it the way it goes, but essentially all I have to do is add the static here and it'll work. So it worked. Wonderful. It should work. If it actually works. Yeah, see, it works. Wonderful. Okay, great. Classes. This doesn't even need to be before main. So if we look at, essentially, I just looked at the error it was getting here. It should be giving us an error any second now. There it is. It says an object reference is required for a non-static field, method, or property, program my function int. So essentially all this was saying is that because this was not assigned to a class of program, in this case I would need to say program p equals new program or whatever, and then say notice I need to go before my bad because I need to declare that as a program class. What did I just do? And then say p.myFunction. And that would work. The reason why is because so in C#, the static keyword essentially means that the whatever is here is going to be implicitly tied to class, and the class does not need to be instantiated. In this case, I need to instantiate a new program class to p. So this is how you instantiate in C# since we're going all the way out there. And yeah, So I need to instantiate that, and then I could use my function since it's a method of P now. Alternatively, I could also say, I could do the same thing, except make this a public static bool of my function. In this case, the way you would call that is by saying program dot my function, because now it's a it's not letting me do that. Okay, my function underscore static. Fine. Underscore static because it's not tied to a certain instantiation of the program class. Does that make sense? So in this case, it's because I declared this function as static. So a static, yeah. So since it's static, I don't need to tie it to a particular class. So is you able to zoom in? I think so. There you go. Is that better? There you go. It's a little bit more zoomed in. So yeah, in this case, it's telling me that this name can be simplified because I'm still in the class program. I don't need to specify that I'm getting this static function from the program class. So yeah, this should still work as expected. Okay, so classes. In this case, one of the nice things about C# is that you can go, one of the nice things about Visual Studio is you can go into here, you can make it automatically create classes for you. In this case, I'm just going to add a class. I'm just going to call it my class. So yeah, so let's just go ahead and get this going. So this is a class, this is a object. If I wanted to reference this, in this case, let's go ahead and make a couple properties for this class. So a property is a value that is stored inside the class. So I can make a public property, int public integer, private int private integer, and then public static int static int. So I'm going to explain what these do. A public int essentially allows you to access the public integer from anywhere outside the class. A private integer can only be accessed inside the class, and a public static integer, much like the static property that I showed you in program here, can be accessed without instantiating the class. So if I wanted to create a new class, a new instantiation of my class, I could go over here and say my class as the data type, and then say, let us call it C equals new my class, and then that creates a new instance of my class, and then we could just, and then now we have an instance of my class. So if I want to access, say, the public integer thing, the public integer property of my class, I could say C dot public integer equals 4, and then console dot write line of C dot public integer, and that should print out 4. However, if I want to access private int, I can't do that from here because private int can be only accessed from inside the class. In this case, I can't say C dot private int equals 4 because private int is inaccessible to its protection level. All that means is that you can't access it because it's a private, and you can't access a private thing from outside its class. If I wanted to access static int, I could say, I would need to take it from, I would say my class dot static int equals 4. Any questions?
Not particularly, no.
All right, so class methods. Whoa. So I could say, let's say we wanted to put a function inside my class. How do we do that? We would say public. Yes, Killer.
Would it be worthwhile going through an more in-depth explanation of if-else statements, purely for the fun of loops, if-else, like maybe put a purpose or explain like, oh, you could use this in a simple quiz or something like that, something which someone who's never picked it up before could easily understand.
Yeah.
But this is just a quick brush over, so
I know. I can tell you guys are just like staying because I don't even know why you guys are on here right now. I feel like I'm talking.
I haven't done programming in over 2 years, so I'd completely forgotten balls existed until this moment.
Okay. Thanks. Alright, so methods really quick. Essentially all method is it's going to be a function inside a class. I could say public and what should I do here? What's a good sample thing? Say my funct let's say add 1, because that's always gonna do, and I could give an argument of I, and I could say return I plus 1. What is that going to do? It's going to take whatever you give it as an integer and return it with its value plus 1. Right? Looks good. How do we call this in our program class? So we can say C dot now, so we take our instance of the class, we take C, and then we get our add 1 function, and then let's give it a value of 10, for example. Now if we run this, it's going to do nothing because it's going to give us an error because S is here for whatever reason, and I don't know why it's here. But it's going to give us a value of 11 because we called add 1 with 10, and it's going to add 1 to the value of 10, and it's going to return 11, it's going to write 11 out. Wonderful stuff. If we wanted to create a static method, we could say public static int add 1 int I, and as you guys can probably tell by the way that things have been working for the statics, we're going to reference this in very much the same way that is it still giving us an error here? Of course. It wants us to have a different name. So we can reference this very much in the same way that we reference the static int by taking the class name, my class, and just calling the function directly from there. So we don't actually need to actually instantiate a new class of my class as C. We can just call it directly from the class itself, and this should do the exact same thing. Wonderful. Okay, what else? Let's go ahead and take a look at constructors. So you guys probably wondered, why did this work here? Well, this is going to create a new class of my class using the default constructor of my class. So constructor essentially is it's kind of like a method of the class that is called whenever you create a new class. By default, now you don't really see it, but it'll create something that looks like this. It'll create public my class, and it'll create, this is essentially a function, but it has no arguments. This is the default constructor for my class. This will be called if you just do this by itself. So as you can see here, it's going to call this. It doesn't have a return type because it's not going to return anything, and it's going to have no arguments initially. Now if I wanted to create a different constructor for my class, I could say that I could create a new constructor by saying public my class, and then let's say int I. So let's just go ahead and set a public integer to the value of I. So what will this constructor do? Well, if we go ahead and create another class of my class, or another instantiation of my class, let's call this C2 equals new my class. Now, if you look here in Visual Studio, it's going to give us two options here. We can say, ooh, look, there's another value for my class with an integer. Let's go ahead and give it a value of 127. So this is going to call this constructor. It's going to give it a value of 127, and it's going to set the value of public integer to I. So in this case, if we go ahead and, let me just kill all this really quick to get it out of our way. If we do this and we say console.writeLine c2.public integer, this will print out the value of 127 that we just slapped into there. Let's go ahead and run that really quick. Boom, 127. Why to do that? Well, we called the myClass constructor with an integer value, which automatically said, well, it's got an integer value, it must be this constructor. Therefore, I took the value of integer I of 127, set that value into the variable public integer, and then if we go back here, we went over here, we tried the write line with the value public integer from C2. So yeah, it printed out that value. Any questions?
My brain's frazzled, personally.
Uh,
I have a suggestion.
yeah.
Oh, two suggestions. Put everyone in loop. I would suggest a recorder throughout things, not necessarily going through the IDE program software. And to put things into perspective and give things a purpose, maybe what we can do is try recreating something that we know works. So we know where we're going, we know how to get there, we just need to code it. Because I think what I'm getting from it is they don't know what they're meant to do with what they're getting. That's the motivation.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and try to make a quick. Why don't we just go ahead and create a goodness. I don't know. What is life? What do you guys feel like doing? Do you guys want to make a basic calculator? That's always good, right? Oh, okay. And what do you want to do, Killer Bee? Other than hacking Facebook.
We're gathered here with the end goal of doing Twitch things, right?
Yes, that is true. Do you guys want to go over, do you guys want to do this in the context of Torch then? I can just go over how to create a basic Torch plugin, we can work from
I
there.
have a question first. I have one question first.
Sure.
What is Torch?
Oh,
No,
so,
I've seen it, and no one's actually explained what Torch is.
so Torch is essentially a way to host SE servers. So in this case, so this is Torch, it's a executable. Give it a couple seconds, it'll actually boot up, and I can show you what the interface looks like. 1 second, come on. Okay, there we go. So this is the Torch interface. As you can see here, it's essentially what it does is it allows you to create a server in SE. So if I press start, it'll create a server at this IP address. This is just a local network server right now. And it'll create it, it'll host it. It's really nice for that. So one of the things that we've been doing with Torch a lot is creating plugins. There are a couple plugins that are created. For example, there's the Essentials plugin, which gives you a ton of additional commands. It lets you have automatic commands that run at certain periods of time. These commands can do things like delete grids. We already use that to delete everything without a beacon. That's what Michigan has been using. And he runs that like every n times. You can also use it to send a message out to the server. Everyone gets the message every once in a while. Automatically restart the server too.
So the end goal of what you're trying to get people to do is to help create these plugins for the server to make life easier. Essentially create tools.
Yeah, basically.
Could you give an example of what tool would need to be created?
Yeah, so here, let me go ahead and load up our GitLab repo. We've been posting some of the things that we've been trying to do on here as just suggestions in our issues list. So one of the things I've been trying to do is create a SOI plugin. Essentially, it'll give the controlling player faction credits every once in a while, give a couple special commands and special abilities to whoever owns the SOI when you're inside the SOI. I'll go over how to. Do you guys want me to go over how to create a local Torch plugin thing?
I think that's a bit later down the line. I was just more trying to put into context what the end goal is.
I see.
Or what the original was like. You know, it's all well and good. It's all well and good telling us a bunch of C# stuff and how to program, but then not telling us, like, fully explaining what you want us to do. It's kind of like, we don't know what we need.
I see. I understand. Okay. You know what? How about this? Do you guys want me to go ahead and yeah.
I have a suggestion. How about you take oversimplify one of the functions in the plugin, like a very specific component, which is going to be simple enough.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be a functional component. It just needs to be the idea.
All right. So let's go ahead and how about this? I can talk about let's just go ahead and talk about a simple plugin that creates a command that echoes whatever you say in the command back to you.
Yeah.
Cool. So let me go ahead and show you this plugin in action. I already built it. So this is just a test command plugin I built. I go into here and chat/players, and I just have to start the server first, of course. Let's let it start for a second. But essentially, what it'll look like is, so in Torch you can execute commands like this. You can say exclamation mark, and then you'd say like help or something. One of the typical commands in Torch is saying long help, and that just sends you a list of all the commands you can possibly use in Torch. So in my case, I created a command called echo, and this will just this will just echo back whatever you said to it. So in this case, if I say echo, then hi, this will just say hi back. So it's a very nice command. And looks like the game is ready, so let's see if this works. So let's take a look at long help first. See if it's up. So yeah, that's what that's gonna do. If I say echo, can you guys see this down here? Is it too small?
I can see it.
Cool. So I say echo hi, it's going to say the server called the echo command with argument hi. So I didn't just make it do this, it's going to take the value of hi, but it also just gives you a bunch of extra information on it. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the plugin looks like that actually created that action. Do you guys want to look at that?
Yeah. Seems like a pretty simple.
Cool. Let's see. See. I just have to switch to your branch really quick to get the code. Oh, whoops. You what? Oh, right. Sorry, I just have to switch to the branch really quick so I have all the code so I can actually use it. Alright, let's close here. I don't need you anymore. Okay. Great. So let's just go ahead and go in here. Let's see, where are you? Somewhere around here. Strategy server, plugins, testing and musings, test2, test command plugin, and then I can just double click on it. It should load. Wonderful. One more second while it loads. So the way I created this is I created two different classes as a main class. This just starts when this is just like the core of the plugin. This handles all the basic stuff, and then I have the command handler class. What this does is it handles the command echo. So let's just look at this one because this is all we really care about at the moment. So if you look here, if I go back to my server, you'll notice that echo, when I called long help is somewhere up here. Somewhere. I know it's here somewhere. Here we are. So it's up here. And if you look here, it's going to have this text in particular. So if we compare it, where is it? It's still right here. If we compare it to here, we'll notice that the command is called echo, which is right here, or .co, and then it has the help text of this function echoes back the first argument provided, which can also be seen right here, and has an argument of a string, which is right here. So you'll notice here that this is not typical in C#, but this is just a special little thing that Torch does. You put the name of the command here, the help text for the command here, who can use it. You can have myPromoteNeville dot admins, moderators, none, owners, scripters, etc., etc. If you put it on none, it'll let everyone use it. And then you have the function here. And when you call this function, and when you type the command echo in here with the appropriate arguments, it'll do the echo function. So yeah, that's essentially how the echo command works. If we look here, this is a bunch of logic, but essentially what this is going to do is it's going to get a string of who called the function. In this case, when we called the function in Torch from the server bot, it said that the server called the echo command of argument high. So if we see here, this is going to say if context set player is null. All this is going to say is this: if the player who called the command was a player, essentially, then do this. Or goodness, how to explain that? Essentially, all this is going to do is it's going to have a string of, if the server called the command, it's going to give us a string the server. If a player command called the command, it's going to give us a string of the player that called the command. And then it's going to take this over here. It's going to say who called. In this case, we notice that it's going to be the string the server here. So if we look back at Torch, it says the server and then called the echo command of argument. And what is the argument? The value of arg. String goes here, so we get the value of arg there. So the server called the echo command of argument high. And then now that we have a string called output, we just slap the output into context at respond. Context at respond is a special command from Torch that lets us send a server message back to whoever called the command. And then we also just log it to the logs. If we look back in here in the actual logs, we'll see that. Where is it? Somewhere. The server called the echo command of argument high. So yeah, that's basically what the function does. Okay, so what should we do now? Do you guys want to go over the steps to how to create this, or?
I just have a quick question for who else is here? Killer B. Are you understanding any of this?
Oh no.
That's my question to Killer B. Does Killer B understand any of this?
I think the question I want to ask Killer B is, do you understand what this function does and have like a basic idea of how this code translated into what that function did? Yeah, usually you would try to figure out what you want to do first before you start to code it, Killer. So yeah, you typically do that first. In this case, I started by saying, well, I wanted to have a command called echo, and then I explained what it's supposed to do here, and then I put the logic inside of it. And yeah, this stuff, this is not the best way to explain it. This is not the best code here to explain exactly what it does, but
You could say the upper part is for documentation, so that when somebody does long help, you could just get the It's not actually part of what the function does.
Oh no, but the thing is, it actually is part of what the function does, because this here is literally what the function is called. If I called this echo2, it would only run if I typed in !echo2. This is literally what the command is called.
Yes, that's what it's called. It's just incremental.
But it's not.
It would still work if you did it with that line 660, right?
Oh no, it would not work at all.
Is that how Torch works?
Yeah, Torch needs these. It would not call the function. It would not run the echo command if these were not here. These are mandatory.
Because I thought those were just purely the visualization of it in the viewport, and regardless of what it said, if you typed in echo due to the public void, it would run that command.
Well,
That's just my assumption.
it would not do that. No. Essentially what the Torch will do is it'll say, well, okay, so it's got these two lines here. It knows it's going to have a command of echo, and it's going to take the next function after that, and I could call this whatever I want to call it, and it would still run. It's only looking at the position of these in the code, and it's going to call these next. Torch is very weird like that. I thought it was very interesting. I thought that this needed to be called echo originally, but turns out it really doesn't matter. Like in the
So the very first command, it's separated by the comma that defines what the function, what the call code for the function kind of is.
yeah.
Okay. That makes a little bit of sense.
Another important thing to note is that the way that Torch figures out if these are actually commands or not is that notice here that so command module needs to be in here like this. This class needs to be, in this case, this is going to be inheriting all the this syntax. Yeah. So essentially you're just going to extend the command module class with whatever class you want to call it, and then just put all your commands inside that class with the correct annotation and syntax.
This is all available in the GitLab, right?
Yes, this should be available on the GitHub.
Copy and dissect it and play around with it and learn from it.
Oh yeah, you could totally do that. If you look on the GitHub, just note that we have multiple branches going on right now. So make sure that you're pulling from this code in particular is from Rain Development. I have the SOI Conquest stuff on that branch in particular. Let's see if I can pull up branches. So yeah, I have the echo code on this branch, and then on this branch has the echo code, and then this branch has the big SOI Conquest stuff that I've been working on.
I've never used GitLab before, so this is all new to me. I've seen it, I've downloaded things from it. I've never actually understood it.
Yes, Killer B. Depending on what software or program you're using to code in, there are slight variations of how it will handle that language.
Yes. Also, Killer B, just a note, the colors aren't really part of the coding language. All that matters is the text. The colors are just there to help us understand what means what. In this case, it highlights main with the colors so we can kind of like tell things apart, so it's easier to read.
It is pretty though.
It is very pretty.
Means a lot of things. Depends on the context.
Yes, but again, to do with reading it and understanding what's separating it, it's not necessarily anything functional.
Yeah. Also, if you guys want to get started in Torch programming, it's are you talking about creating a new programming language, Keller?
Cool.
Okay, so anyways, if we go to the main Torch site, just one thing to note is that Torch has a really good wiki here, and then they have some plugin development tutorials. So essentially, it's a very nice tutorial. They have, this is just like the bare minimum you need. This creates a basic plugin by extending the Torch plugin base class with any class you want, and then you can this is essentially Hello World. This will well, you have to put this in here, but it's a Hello World by this says that in here. If we look over at my code, we'll notice that this is essentially the same thing, except that it says starting test command plugin instead of this is a test if it works. So if you look back in here at the log, it should be somewhere up in here where it says that. It's a little bit below here. Starting test command plugin right here. Also, they also have a little bit, it's not the best, honestly. Like, they have some good things on how to create commands. This is the command, how to create commands, very, very thorough. But everything else I had a little bit more trouble looking at, so I ended up really just having to dig into the other plugins that other people have made, especially the Essentials plugin, and see how that works. Do you guys want me to go over how to create a basic plugin with you guys? I can just do that really quickly. It's actually really simple. Although you guys would probably do the exact same thing if you just like copied and pasted everything from here and just went through it, which is probably, if you guys want to get into building plugins, like this is essentially all you need to read, and then you're essentially golden from there.
I think it's important for people to grasp the basic understanding of C# first before they move on to understanding necessarily how Torch works.
That is very much true.
It's like, maybe not necessarily now, but maybe at some time, go through for very basic, for people who understand absolutely nothing, just create a simple if statement piece of code in Visual Studios. Because Killer seems to understand absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So a simple piece of if-else statement code, which is like a little quiz.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's just that I'm just kind of torn because I'm trying not to bore you guys to death at the same time. I can do that right now if you guys want me to. Like, seriously, I can just go over absolute basic stuff right now.
I think maybe that's best. Maybe just touch base on if-else statements and integers.
Alright. Killer, are you ready to go? Because I'm going to do a really, really basic tutorial right now, and you should probably watch this. Alright.
Can I say something, Killer, about code? The basic, the basic logic behind how does it know what to echo? It simply stores what you write after the command echo. It stores it in a variable and it brings it back to you.
Yes. If there's a box, you put something in the box, but each box is slightly different shape, so only certain things can go in the box. Like numbers with a decimal place, a whole number, words, sentences, blah blah blah.
We've seen it when we were looking at the echo function. We saw that it's separated into two areas. The upper area is how Torch knows to translate your echo command, knows what to do with it. And in the same page, there was the actual function, the actual logic. So think of it as a directory, like a dictionary. You don't know what echo is, you open a dictionary and then you see instructions.
also don't be afraid to, if you're trying to learn a language, like you especially are now, don't be afraid to go, I want to do this, don't know how to do it. Don't be afraid to just Google it, because you will be surprised of how, oh, I didn't know that worked.
Yeah.
That is, it's not uncommon. That's how I learned what I know. Because my teacher was shit.
Be right back.
Okay. Here, 1 second. Yes, Mom? No, thank you, not right now. I'm a bit busy. Alright, so, Killer, are you ready to go? Okay. Are you ready to go over really, really basic stuff? You said that your headphone was not working really well right now. Alright. Okay. So, do you have Visual Studio on your computer right now? Honestly, if you just like kind of do what I'm doing, it'll make it a little bit easier for you. Alright. Well, in that case, we'll go really slow and you can ask questions whenever you are a little bit lost, okay? Yeah, it's gonna take like an hour. Alright, so I'm gonna open up Visual Studio 2019. And I'm going to create a new console application. Essentially, all a console application is it's just something that works in the command line. You know what the command line is, right? It's just like, it's the hacky looking thing like this. Essentially, we're just going to create a console app using the .NET Core. .NET Core, all that means is it's using Windows stuff. So it works on Windows, and it's a console application, and it uses C#.
Wait, so Visual Studio Code is what you're using, is it?
Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code.
That explains why I keep getting very, very confused.
Are you using Visual Studio Code?
I'm using Visual Studio Code.
I love Visual Studio Code. I have it too. Look, I love using it.
I just don't. I have it. I don't understand how it works. So I was sort of like flapping around in it earlier, going, "Yeah, this is all broken. I'll come back to it later."
Yeah, Visual Studio Code is nice for just basic code writing, but it's not very good for this kind of development because you can't. It's harder to make it compile things than to It's easier to write code. It's very hard to compile things in Visual Studio Code. I mean, like, it's not that hard, but it takes a little bit more time. It's just, it's not. All right. So, okay, I'm just waiting for Killer B to finish up his conversation right now.
Um,
Sorry about that.
I've stopped recording, by the way, P, because I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here for.
Yeah.